Hey everybody, here we go. X.9, which, yeah, we're sorry if it's a little confusing or whatever. Like, we are going a little bit out of order, you know what I mean? So we'll do X.8 last. But X.9 is about factoring by UnFOIL some more, but this is kind of like what's known as the special case, right? So, do you remember from our review, from like foiling and stuff, that sometimes when you multiply certain types of special bubbles together, like look at these two bubbles. One bubble is x plus 9, the other bubble is x minus 9. And when you multiply these bubbles together, which a lot of people call foil, not birch, but most people, you end up with x squared. Ugh. Can't have that. X times negative 9 is negative 9x. Positive 9 times x is positive 9x. And then positive 9 times negative 9 is actually negative 81. And here's the special thing that happens. This term and this term combine together to actually cancel each other out, and you end up with what's technically 0x, which you don't end up even writing. So you get a special sort of final answer with like the middle term not being there. So again, the premise here is that sometimes when you foil together special bubbles that are pretty like the same bubble but different, one's a plus, one's a minus, you get this special thing that happens. So you gotta be, so when it comes to like factoring, okay, especially with by UnFOIL, you gotta remember that this special thing is a possibility, okay? Now the good news is, whenever you end up with this special situation, what you're always going to get is the difference of perfect squares. Because that x squared comes from x times x, or x squared. This 81 comes from 9 times negative 9, or like 9 squared. So 81 is a perfect square. X squared is also a perfect square, and because that ends up being a minus every time, it's got to be a minus. That's why we say difference of two perfect squares. So if that's what you're trying to like unfoil, you can. So look at number 1. When you look at number 1, once again, is there a what? What's the first method we always try first? Is there a GCF between x squared and negative 25? No, of course not. I mean, this doesn't have a number out in front other than 1, and this doesn't have an x. So the GCF is 1, but that doesn't count. So you got to remember that, yes, as long as this is a difference of two perfect squares, it's got to be that special, it actually can unfoil into this a bubble times a bubble. And all you really got to do is, okay, there's at least two sort of major ways to come at this, and think about this. Probably the way that I naturally go with, just on instinct, is, okay, what's the square root of x squared? Okay, x. So that starts off the bubbles because x times x is x squared. Well, then what's the square root of 25? 5 is the square root of 25. And then one bubble's a plus and one bubble's a minus, okay? Because again, overall, positive 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. Some people may choose to kind of think of it as, well, there's technically a 0x in the middle. You can't see it, but there's a 0x. So if you want to go this way, then knock yourself out. Go for it. You can think of it as, okay, what two numbers multiply to get negative 25, but they also add up to 0? And of course, that's positive 5 and negative 5. Just like you can look at number 2 and say, all right, technically, there's a 0x in the middle that's just not there anymore. So are there two numbers that multiply to get negative 4, but they also add up to 0? And of course, those two numbers are positive 2 and negative 2. But once again, that's because like 2 is the square root of 4, and x is the square root of x squared. Number 3, is this, so look, you're thinking like, there's no GCF. Remember, that's always what you try first. There's no GCF, so your plan B is UnFOIL. Now, here's another way to say this, right? This does not UnFOIL unless it's the difference of two perfect squares. The only way something like this UnFOILs, see, look, normally something that UnFOILs looks like this. 3 terms. You know, that's the normal, that's how things normally look that are going to UnFOIL. So when you look at like number 3, you're thinking, that's just like, that's only got 2 terms. So literally the only way that this does UnFOIL is if it is the difference of two perfect squares. So is 40, we know x squared is a perfect square. Is 49 a perfect square? Does it have a nice square root? Well, yeah, 7. So our two bubbles are going to be x plus 7 and x minus 7. That's it. That's it. And it doesn't matter which bubble you put the positive 7 and which one you put the negative 7 in. Doesn't matter. Number 4. Ooh, plot twist. First of all, no GCF. Now, the square root of 1, is 1 a perfect square? Does it have a perfect square root? Yes, it does. So let's make this one plus and this one minus. But 9x squared. Is 9x squared a perfect square? Yeah. What's the square root of 9x squared? 3x. That's what it is. So there you go. Number 4. So much tougher of an example, right? Nah. So just be ready for that. So the square root, so 9x squared is a perfect square. And so it UnFOILed. Remember, as long as it's a difference of two perfect squares, it UnFOILs. Is 4x squared minus 36? Is that the difference? Remember, just another reminder I want to throw in here right now, just out of nowhere. If that minus was a plus, right, you wouldn't be able to do it, at least this way, you know. Or maybe let's do number 6 really quick, you know, while I'm making this little reminder point. Let's do that with number 6. X squared minus 64. If this had said x squared plus 64, x squared is a perfect square. 64 is a perfect square. It is, you know, because 8. But since that's a plus, this would not factor at all. It's got to be the difference of two perfect squares, because just because of the way FOIL works, you know, the fact that this was a -9 and a +9 and they were going to cancel out in the first place, this had to be a -81. Negative times a positive. It's got to be, you know, so it's got to be a difference. And so this one ends up being x plus 8 and x minus 8. Now number 5, I don't want to be a hypocrite, okay? Honestly, this was an accident on my part, but anyway, whatever. Let's just do it. So what's the first method we always try, people? What did it? What did it? GCF. And I'm telling you, you got to be on your toes about that. I mean, if there's a GCF, because there is one here, what's the GCF of 4x squared and 36, or negative 36? It's 4. You can factor out a 4, and you can rewrite this as 4 times this group of two terms. You know, when you divide 4 away from both of those terms, these are the two leftovers. And then you can look at this and go, hey, wait a minute, now x squared minus 9, that, come on. Screwed up. Anywho, sorry, bad time for that. So, the 4 times this bubble, well, doesn't this bubble factor again by special case UnFOIL, because x squared minus 9 is the difference of two perfect squares, and that means you can rewrite it as x minus 3 times x plus 3. And again, the 4 comes on down. The 4 doesn't disappear. Why would it disappear? And there we go. That's all I have to say about that.